Hey, it's Adam Zdroik of RotoWire. March Madness is here. 2024 NCAA tournament is here. It is Wednesday. I'm talking about exactly 24, 25 hours before the tournament gets started with Mississippi State and Michigan State. This is going to be, I'm not going to give exact picks. I'm not going to give you my exact picks in my bracket, but let's just try and win your bracket pool. This is going to be kind of a general discussion on how to win bracket pools based off the size of the bracket competition that you're in. First off, rotowire.com. Check out all the content we have for college basketball right on the front page here. We got all the team previews that you can actually see. If you're playing at Yahoo, you can actually see all of these. Is you can just hover over right here and check out all these team previews like that. But these are also over at Yahoo if you're playing at Yahoo, which is what I will be using. But check out the college basketball page as well. So we got the team previews. We got a bunch of DFS stuff. We got prize picks content. We got region by region breakdowns from a bunch of our different writers. Jake Latarski, the college basketball editor, just put up the DFS preview for Thursday's massive slate, 16-game slate. In case you're interested in DFS or DraftKings, that is up as well on the site. Here we go. And what else we got? We got a bunch of stuff. We got bets. I put up a future bet article. That's somewhere in here. There's just so much stuff. Obviously, just click betting here. We got Wednesday picks. We had picks Tuesday. We already got picks up for Thursday's games. Steve Peralta, who's had a pretty successful season, writing that article for us. Got a bunch of different stuff, but I'm more focused on. We also got to mention Jesse Siegel's barometer, the NCAA tournament gospel. So check that out. All the content that you could ask for right over at rotowire.com/C basketball. And most of that stuff is for free outside of like the optimizers and all that good stuff. But I'm going to be going over the bracket and breaking down some basic things. And I'll run through a blank bracket and see if we can get somewhere with that. But that's all the content at RotoWire. Let's try and figure out how to win some money in our brackets, or maybe you're playing in your family bracket with 10 people. Let's slam it in your family's face and try to beat your family in bracket. Or if you're like me and just randomly pick, I went to Michigan State, so I'll pick Michigan State to the Final Four, and I'll pick some stupid stuff in there, and I don't care if I lose. But if you really want to beat your family or something in a 10-person pool, we'll have some tips for you in terms of that as well. But let's get started here. So the first thing I look at when starting a bracket, or no matter what kind of pool you're in, kind of a thing. Let me pull up the slide here. So on the left-hand side of the screen, we have Yahoo is on the left-hand side, and then ESPN is on the right-hand side, which is, for some reason, there is a surprising difference between the amount of people picking UConn over at Yahoo compared to ESPN. So left is Yahoo, right is ESPN. I'm not sure how much. I don't know. It almost seems like these numbers are kind of lying. Like, why is ESPN? Why are only 24% of people picking UConn at ESPN, but 34% at Yahoo? It might have something to do with just like the autofill button over at each of these sites. Maybe that has something to do with it. Either way, we know UConn is going to be the most popular team. If you look at all the metrics, or if you even watch college basketball, I think, for me personally, I think UConn, I think they should be, closer to 50%. I think this is a team that has been the best team pretty much all season. And we look at the percentages here, UConn, Houston, of course, we have all the number one seeds. And I thought one of these sites actually had Arizona over North Carolina, but it looks like those numbers are evened out a little bit. But yeah, I grabbed these Tuesday morning, so there may be some percentage changes if you're looking today or even Thursday kind of thing. But as you can see, a lot of 1-2 seeds. Iowa State is the 6th team over at ESPN, but they're not even top 7 at Yahoo. partly because they are in UConn's section of the bracket. So I guess that makes sense there. And then Tennessee and Kentucky getting some love out of the SEC. Kentucky always getting some love. I'm sure if we go to the list right now, we could probably actually I will go to the list in a little bit here. But if we go to the list right now, you could I'll pull it up right here as I'm talking about it. Here's the one over at Yahoo. So I was gonna say Duke will probably be high just because of Duke, but Duke's actually only 13th over at Yahoo. So here's the list. And what does all this mean? Well, for starters, you're gonna need to what to be different than everyone else, basically in your bracket pool. So if we're looking at this, we're looking at these percentages, and let's say you're in a 20-person pool, and we take the okay. Let's just say on a general level, let's say 25 to 35% of people are picking UConn to go all the way. Though I think, if you're playing, if your bracket pool is on the East Coast, if it's in New York or if it's in Connecticut, that kind of thing, you're going to be 80. It's going to be 80% people picking UConn. But so some of that will be depending on where the majority of the people in your bracket are based. But I still think it could be, even if like I'm over here in Michigan, I think we could get like 40% UConn in some of the brackets I'm in. We'll see what it turns out to be, but that's just kind of how I'm thinking. So a 20-person pool, you're basically, if you pick UConn to win, you're competing with 5 to 10 people per se in this 20-person pool. Obviously, if it's a 10-person pool, you're going to be competing with 3, 4, 5 people. This is to finish first. This is to finish, get all the money, win your bracket pool. You up the stakes a little bit. 100-person pool, you're competing with, again, as you can see on top of the screen, this is as UConn as champs. This is just off the basis of the biggest favorite, UConn. Everyone's picking UConn. So picking UConn in a 100-person pool. If UConn win the national title, you're competing with 25 to 35 people. Up the stakes a little bit more, 1,000 people. And then obviously, if you up the stakes, if you for some reason think you can win the ESPN or Yahoo bracket challenges, that's obviously you're going to be competing with a lot more people. But in a general sense, I think there's a lot of people, playing in 100, 200, 500, and 1,000 people pool. So as we get up to 1,000 people, like obviously when you have UConn, you're competing with upwards of around 300 people to get first place. So that means you got to be different in a few different places. 100 even in a 100-person pool, like you have UConn, you still can't plug in your ones and twos. You still can't plug in all the favorites. As I go back to this page over at Yahoo, as we can see who are the most popular teams that people are picking to get to the Sweet 16. Again, this isn't rocket science here. It's going to be you're going to see a lot of 1 through 4 seeds reaching to the Sweet 16. That's what people were picking. So to get different in all these pools, you got to find something other than the 1, 2, 3, 4s. So here's the teams that are most picked to win in the Sweet 16. Like you can go down the list here. We got all 4 number 1 seeds. We got all the 2 seeds here. We got all the 3 seeds. We got all the 4 seeds. And then Auburn is actually below Gonzaga here just because they would face UConn in the Sweet 16. So then Elite 8, teams that can win the Elite 8. So again, this isn't, as I said, this isn't too difficult to figure out, but just showing everyone that even though everyone knows that, okay, it's happened one time where all 4 number 1 seeds have made the Final Four back in 2008. Even though that's the case, there's still everyone, whether it's, okay, I'm just going to look at the odds, I'm going to look at metrics. It's going to be a lot of 1, 2 seeds get into the Final Four, get into the final. So that's where you kind of differentiate from everyone a little bit. And even, Kentucky isn't really differentiating. They're the 5th most popular team to make the national final over at Yahoo. So even as a 3 seed, so they're more popular than Arizona, Tennessee, Iowa State, and Marquette there. That's a brand thing. That's Kentucky as a branding issue there. So that's what I'm kind of starting with here, just in terms of what we're actually going to be looking at. So at the basis of this, you want to be in a 20-person pool. Pick your ones and two seeds, and maybe the decision will come down to, okay, I got more games correct in the first and second rounds than everyone else, and I won this 10-person, 20-person pool. When you're only competing with, five different entries who picked UConn as your champion, um, it's a little easier. When you get up to 100, that's when it starts to get different. That's when you have to get different in your bracket, which is what I'll get into a little bit. I also wanted to look at, so while I do think UConn is the best team in the country, while I think they are the most complete team, I pulled this up. I saw this earlier this morning from team rankings. They have percentages of public picking the team as champions over the last 10 or so years, 10 plus years here. So as we look at this list, I just wanted to point out just the teams that had percentages around where UConn is right now. UConn's sitting around this 30% public rate of people picking them as champions. Last couple of years, it's been a little lower than that. Alabama, Gonzaga in the 2021 tournament, I believe that was the one Gonzaga went to the final against Baylor. That was one of the rare tournaments where it's like, okay, the two best teams that we've seen all season, they faced each other in the final, and Baylor ended up winning that one. Baylor was probably the second most popular team that year. But we go back a little bit. 2019 Duke was 40% picked by the public as the champion, and that was the Zion Williamson, that was the RJ Barrett year, and that team wasn't even that elite. I think they finished with 5 losses in the regular season, something like that. Like, they had weird losses throughout the season. It wasn't some kind of extremely dominant team yet because of Duke, because of Zion. They were up to 40%. And unfortunately for them, they lost to Michigan State. So shouts to the Spartans on that one. Scrolling down the list a little bit more, Kentucky, the 2015, I think that was the year they lost to, 2012. I'm getting a mix up. Either way, Kentucky, that was a year with Karl Anthony Towns and Devin Booker in 2015. So obviously 2 elite NBA level players on their team, close to 50%. I think they had 1 or 2 losses entering the tournament, but they ended up, did they win? That might have been the year they won. I'm mixing up my years here a little bit as I'm talking about, but this maybe it was 2012, the other one. Either way, 2012, 37%. That was the Anthony Davis season, and they entered the tournament undefeated, as long as I'm getting my years correct here. So as you can see with all these, and they ended up losing to Frank Kaminsky in Wisconsin in the Final Four. So as you can see with all these, even though there are some teams more popular than UConn, better than this UConn team have been in prior years, those teams still didn't come out on top. So even though we come here and be like, okay, yeah, UConn is the best overall team, offensively, defensively, they have the NBA prospects kind of a thing. At the end of the day, this is the NCAA tournament. So sometimes the best overall team maybe doesn't win. Maybe there's going to be an upset along the way. And that's what we'll get into as we try and find the teams to back here. And all right, so I pulled up, this is over at Bart Torvik, just another stat provider check. And right, so this is on the left-hand side. This is stats taken from the past month. Instead of using stats for the full season, I grabbed stats. I think it dated back to February 14th, Valentine's Day. So shouts to Valentine's Day there. But you can grab stats with any dates you want over at Bart Torvik, and then you can get adjusted offensive efficiency, defensive adjusted efficiency, basically all the stats over there at Bart Torvik. So you can check that out. Bart Torvik is what I'm using here. So on the left-hand side, it's the top 12 teams in terms of adjusted offensive efficiency over the last month. And on the right-hand side, it's a top 11. I think I grabbed it with me. Maybe top 10. Top 11 adjusted defensive efficiency teams over the last month. And these teams are usually like looking at in terms of, instead of looking back to 4 or 5 months in October, November, that kind of thing. I don't really like looking back that far. We already know the season long stats kind of thing. If we want to kind of differentiate from some of these from some of these other metrics, but you look at the numbers here. UConn's in both of these because actually they're not top 10 in defense, but they're up there. I just want to point out we have these top 10, top whatever offensive teams, defensive teams. Like we look at the Illinois, Gonzaga, Kentucky. I just want to point out that how bad these defenses are for some of these teams. Alabama is also on that list. Teams that I'm not going to be picking far in my tournament. That means they're extremely boom or bust. If their offense isn't clicking one night, if they're not hitting threes at a consistent rate, their defense going to keep them around? Is their defense going to be good enough to let them advance against whoever they're playing? So that is one thing I like looking at. The defensive side, Iowa State's getting a lot of buzz. They won the Big 12 tournament. But look at that offense, just not very good. Michigan State also, surprisingly, a top 10 defensive team there. Kansas also up there, also announced that Kevin McCullough is going to be out. Just teams that have been struggling offensively. Duquesne, surprisingly, on this list as well. So you got all these, good defensive teams, but is their offense going to be good enough? Maybe their defense is going to be good enough to, battle out a couple games here and there. But is their offense going to be good enough to let them go on a run? Probably not. That's kind of why I don't think Iowa State's actually going to make it to the Elite Eight to face UConn. Their defense is good, but is their offense going to be consistent enough? Are they going to be able to score enough points against some of these teams? Because maybe this is already a bad offensive team. It worked against Big 12 teams that they see all the time, but is it going to work against Drake, Washington State, South Dakota State? Maybe I should mention them. No one's picking South Dakota State, but let's get to the bracket here. So I went over, we got the 10 person pool, 100 person pool, 1,000 person pool, whatever it is. So I think in the smaller pools, if you like UConn, just pick UConn, and you don't really have to change anything else up. You're not going to really duplicate anyone else. Use whatever you want to use. Pick the better seeds in all the matchups for the 10, 20 person pool. You don't really have to get different. You don't purposely have to get different, is what I'll say. So on the smaller pools, pretty straightforward. You can look at the odds, go to any of the sports books, find the odds for the first round games, pick the favorites in all of those. And at the end of the day, it's probably not going to matter too much. Maybe pick a 3 seed or 3 seed of the Elite Eight or something like that instead of a 2 seed. Do whatever you want in the smaller pools. You don't have to get different in those. As we get higher, as we get to the 50s, we get to the 100 person pool, that kind of thing. That's kind of why I wanted to do the show a little bit, just to give some examples of what you have to do to actually be in a good position to win a bracket pool with more than 10, 20 entries, kind of a thing. And just given how, if you watch college basketball this season, even if you haven't watched college basketball this season, I think the metrics here, let me pull up Ken Palm here. The metrics, I guess UConn actually bumped Houston recently in terms of the metrics, but for the most part of the season, Houston was the number one team per the metrics all season. But I mean, if you watch teams play, I think you can argue UConn is just a better team. They got more NBA talent. They have Klingen down low, who I think is just better offensively than any of Houston's bigs. That's another story if we just want to get into, 1v1 matchups. But so as we get up to 50 person pools, 100 person pools. So how do you want it? How should you get different? I looked at the Yahoo percentage picks page earlier. Again, you can find all this stuff. So on Yahoo, right here, you can go to research. There's a popular picks bracket. That's going to be you're basically looking at all. I'll click on it right here. You're basically looking at, 1, 2, 1, 3, Kentucky over Marquette there, as I talked about already. 1 and 2, 1 and 2. This is popular picks bracket. That's basically, you could probably copy paste that, put that in your family bracket if you really want, if you don't know anything about college basketball. But I assume if you want to know something about college basketball, you're probably not listening to this. But that's just get the popular plays out of the way, because there are people, even in 50-person brackets, 100-person brackets, there's going to be there's going to be many people who just have all the ones and twos, 1, 3, maybe some fours in there, but it's all going to be the basic ones and twos in the Elite Eight. So you can use that popular picks bracket and kind of build off that. And that's how you kind of want to differentiate. Then the pick distribution is the one I was using earlier. So let's get back to this. So let's say we're going up a little bit, 50-person, 100 entries kind of thing. So how do you want to get different in this? Let's say you still want UConn as champion. Let's say you can't get past UConn as your champion. I think you can still win these brackets, even though you're competing with, if we're getting up to, you're competing with 40 other people who pick UConn as a title contender. I think you can still get different in a few ways here. It could be Kentucky, though. Kentucky is the most popular one. I pulled up the Bart Torvik numbers earlier, and let's see where Kentucky's at. Kentucky, what is that? That number is too small on my screen. Either way, let me pull it up here on my screen. Kentucky over the past month is 126 in adjusted defensive efficiency. Do you want to pick a team that basically hasn't played defense all season outside of 1 or 2 games to the Final Four? Probably not. So maybe we can consider, okay, maybe they get upset along the way somewhere. Maybe North Carolina is a team to get upset somewhere. My favorites in terms of I think they're good or not, I like UConn and I like Purdue's route. Purdue, I think, has the best route to the Elite Eight. So probably in the majority of my brackets, probably in all of my brackets. Yes, I do multiple brackets. My strategy, I guess I'll get my strategy out of the way. So Sunday, Selection Sunday, I do, this is just like a personal thing, just a bunch of free brackets. I don't enter all these money competitions or anything, just like a personal thing. So I do bracket after getting all the information. It's kind of blank information bracket for me, just prior information. So I do a bracket Sunday, I do a bracket Monday after listening to podcasts, reading whatever, and I do a bracket Tuesday and then another one Wednesday. So the level of content I'm getting from Twitter, from podcasts, from wherever is going to be different every day. So I also like picking different champions to see what happens there. But usually I find that the first bracket I do without outside information is actually usually one of my best ones, with whatever case that may mean. But it's just something that I use to look back at a little bit. But in terms of this route, so I think we don't want to pick upsets for UConn. If you're big on UConn, we're gonna have Purdue in the Elite Eight at a minimum. I think that's a lock. We got the news of McCullough being out. I don't like this Gonzaga team that much. Again, let's pull up. Gonzaga is another team just not even top 100 in defensive efficiency. So I like the route here. So we got Purdue. We're locking Purdue in, and if we're already picking UConn, we're locking UConn in. So where can we get different? We got these 1 seeds in here. So we're looking at the West here. I think we can get different in the West. North Carolina is a good team, but are they a great team? I don't think they're a great team. And will they get upset somewhere? I'm not saying Michigan State will upset them. I'm not saying Mississippi State will upset them, but I think those could be interesting games, just because Mississippi State and Michigan State can both play defense. And if the defense is working and they're hitting a couple shots, that is an upset situation there. I mean, if we look back in these Hubert Davis North Carolina teams, are we still sold on his ability to coach in the NCAA? I mean, maybe not the NCAA tournament, but just in his overall ability. UNC kind of rode a hot streak. If you look back 2 years ago when they went on their hot streak, their first game, or their round of 32 game against Baylor, where they're up, they could have blew that game. They're up 20 something points. Could have blew that game. Baylor came back, and then the RJ Davis Caleb Love combo kind of won it for them. And then they missed the tournament last year. So I'm still not sold here on Hubert Davis, and I think you might actually get a coaching advantage from either one of these 8-9 teams against Hubert Davis. So that'll be That'll be something there. I may not be picking UNC, but that is a route to go. If you're high on this Alabama offense, I know they're not good defensively, but any day they could score 100 points. Are they going to score 100 points 3 straight games? I don't know. Maybe not. But St. Mary's Grand Canyon, okay. Options, options to take on UNC. The bottom of the bracket, I think we can get a little crazy as well. Arizona. I'm still not sold on Arizona. The metrics love Arizona. If we look at some of the metrics, they're good offensively, defensively. For some reason, Caleb Love has been off his game for the last 3 or 4 games. I don't know the case with that. We'll see if he's back to normal. If you look at his game logs, for some reason he's just not performing to the level he was the entire season, really. As we get to the bigger brackets, one thing I like to do. So New Mexico is actually favored over Clemson. Moving New Mexico farther than a lot of people. This is probably like a 1% move to have New Mexico here. That's one thing that I'm personally looking at. I'm not huge on Arizona. I'm not huge on Baylor. Baylor's is another one of those teams that just doesn't really have the defense. Um, Arizona, I'm still not there with them. They had some weird losses in the Pac-12. Um, we'll see. I don't think Long Beach State's going to give them trouble, but they have a good roster with Balo and Caleb Love. They got players, they got NBA level players, but last season is fresh in my mind still. So there's one way you can get different, and again, North Carolina another way you can get it. But if you don't pick North Carolina here and you got New Mexico here, this is, let's say you're in a 100-person bracket kind of thing. This is something no one's gonna have. Like Mississippi State against New Mexico in the Elite Eight. This is like bracket challenge stuff. This is ESPN Yahoo bracket challenge stuff. Because at this point, you're not going to find many people with this going the winner of Mississippi State and New Mexico, or even if we go St. Mary's, New Mexico. It's just not going to be a popular thing. So that's one way of getting really different. You could do something like this in even 100-person where you're still competing with 25 to 35 other brackets. This is a way to get really different and kind of be left alone, but you're also going to be on an island here. So where if UConn wins and we actually get UNC or we get Arizona in that Final Four matchup, then you're obviously going to be on the outside looking in. But granted, if that happens, then there's still going to be 20, 30 people competing. So Purdue, who's going to play Purdue? So looking at this, we have Tennessee. We know about Rick Barnes's struggles in the NCAA tournament. So is it going to be Tennessee getting there? I'm not sure. Texas, Colorado State. We just saw Colorado State play. Tennessee, their offense is kind of built around Dalton Connect. We look at those analytics from earlier. Let me pull up where Tennessee is. So Tennessee's adjusted offensive efficiency. Like they're good defensively, but their adjusted offensive efficiency just isn't that good because a lot of it's built around, okay, Dalton Connect, do what you're going to do. Even though we have some other solid players, Akai Ziegler, Josiah Jordan-James, like we have these other guys, but it's been just connect, shoot 20 to 30 times in a game. Is that going to work? Is this going to be, Kevin Durant like run for Tennessee? I don't know. Rick Barnes really hasn't done it in the tournament. So are they going to make it all the way to the Elite Eight here to play Purdue, whoever? Maybe. This is another place to get different. I think the winner of this South Carolina Oregon game would be interesting. Oregon is a team that N'Faly Dante missed the first couple months of the season, and they really turned it on in the Pac-12 tournament. Looking at their numbers for the past month, they're okay. They aren't elite by any means in terms of defense or offensive efficiency, but they're about top 50-ish or so over the past month. If we take the past 2 weeks, include the Pac-12 tournament, Oregon's probably one of the better teams in the country. But I think you can go either one of these teams, maybe upset Creighton, or maybe you want to take Creighton. I'm still not entirely sold on Creighton. This team never really has a bench. They don't really foul much. Kalkbrenner, I don't think Kalkbrenner really took a step compared to last season. He's always going to be a defensive presence in the paint. And Shireman is the one who kind of stepped up a little bit, more of a ball handler. I'm still kind of tentative. They had a fairly easy road last season. And like if they get Tennessee or if they get South Carolina, Oregon, like I think these matchups are all going to be harder than what they played last season. I can't remember exactly what it was, but so I'm locking Purdue in this spot. Samford's going to be a popular pick here. Whatever, Gonzaga, McNeese will probably be popular as well. Maybe just go Gonzaga here. And yeah, so this is as we get up to the thousand person bracket pools kind of thing. I already talked about, okay, maybe we move Oregon. We move Oregon to the Elite Eight against Purdue. Maybe we have all this. In your 100-person bracket pools, you're still going to want a fairly simple uh, Elite Eight, Final Four. Even if it's UConn, Purdue, you're still going to want to get different somewhere. Like, are you going to still want UNC and Arizona in the spot? Play it fairly safe. Baylor, if you like Baylor, if you like Alabama, sure, go for it. Not my preference, but Houston, maybe Houston's one of the teams. Juwan Roberts dealing with some kind of knee issue in the Big 12 tournament. Maybe you go somewhere else. Maybe Wisconsin catches fire. Duke catches fire. This South region is up for debate, I'll say, but this is kind of all I want to talk about. I'm just talking in general here. I'll build out my initial thoughts of what I think. So Illinois is one of these teams, just a boomer bust teams, doesn't really play defense. If we can go crazy a little bit here, but I think we can get an Iowa State upset. I think even though Illinois struggles defensively, I'm still not sure there's a perfect matchup here to actually foil that bad defense. I know BYU is a high scoring team, but they're also another team that I'm not completely sold on defensively. And then you got Terrence Shannon, who is on a tear to be a lottery pick, 40 points a game, at least 40 points in one game in the Big Ten tournament. So I think this is a pretty good path for Illinois. So that's one of my I'm probably leaning here, Illinois. I think we can get a Houston upset along the way. One thing about Houston is Kelvin Sampson has been one of the most consistent coaches kind of over the past however many years, this Houston team. Even though people like the hate on Houston a little bit, pre-Big 12 in the AAC, they didn't really have the same competition. But this Houston team, whether it's 1, 2, whatever seed they are, they've been getting pretty far in the tournament recently. Elite Eight, Final Fours. So they've been consistent. And maybe because of that consistency, I think we can maybe plug them in over here. I still don't know who I'm taking from the bottom of the South. I think one thing I'm looking out for, Darian Williams, arguably Texas Tech's best player. If Darian Williams is healthy, I may go Texas Tech over Kentucky. I like the way that Texas Tech is playing. Let me pull up some of these stats. I think Texas Tech actually had pretty good stats over the past month. Okay, I guess it wasn't as good as I thought they were, but top 50 in both offensive and defensive. Just a team to look out for. NC State, they did what they did in the ACC tournament. Can they keep it up? I don't know. Might be a flash in the pan, but DJ Burns is a problem, I think, for every team in this tournament. So I think the South here, you can get different somewhere in the South. If you don't want to pick Houston, I think you can get different somewhere. Kentucky and Duke are more popular. I think Wisconsin is an option to beat Duke. And also people aren't picking Marquette. So maybe you go Marquette here. Maybe Tyler Kolek's, maybe he's going to be good to go. I don't really think he's 100%. Oblique injuries are always iffy, but maybe Tyler Kolek's good. Maybe Marquette actually makes the Final Four. And again, Kentucky's more popular pick to reach Final Four than Marquette. So maybe, even though they're a 2 seed, maybe that is like an upset play to pick Marquette to go that far. I'm probably not going to do it. I haven't really been high on Marquette, even with Tyler Kolek, but maybe they do that. So that's what we're looking at. 100-person bracket pools. We want to do. You want some things to be different. You want the ability to get first place. And obviously, I even touched on not picking UConn. So the teams that you don't want instead of UConn, if you don't want to pick UConn, okay, Auburn, we're looking at Houston, not Kentucky because of that weak defense. Duke actually shows up well in the metrics. So Duke is an option as well. If you're big metrics, Purdue obviously is a choice. Tennessee, not completely sold at Tennessee actually winning it all. North Carolina, I'm not sure they can win it all. Alabama, okay. There's not Arizona. It shows up in the metrics. There's not that many teams outside of UConn that I can think that I think can win it all. So that's kind of why I based most of this around UConn as your main target there. But that's all I got here. 35 minutes in. I think I started to ramble a little bit at the end. But if you have any questions, find me at Zdroik. Always go to rotowire.com. College basketball, find all the content we have as well. But these are just some examples. This is not my exact bracket, but just ways to win your bracket pools, whether it's 10 person, 100 person, 1,000 person, whatever it's going to be. Thank you for watching this. Good luck on your bracket, and hopefully we got actually there's no hope. We know March Madness is going to be fun. We know March Madness is always madness and always an enjoyment. Assuming Michigan State, they take down UNC in the round of 32. Thanks for watching. See everyone later.